G'day guys, thank you all for joining us again on this coach chat. A little bit of a different one. We've got Ross McMains out of lockdown in LA. We've got him joining us today to go over some of his experiences with player development and some different things in that mind. As always, first off, I'd like to thank our sponsors keeping us going at the moment. Dreamstreet Lending, Tyre Power, SodaStream, Buller, Trojan Tools, Rolled, TAC, Subaru, Harcourts, Moose Toys, Chemist Warehouse, Wiz, The Sporting Globe, and Dermatech. Roscoe, you're missing out on some good food from the Sporting Globe at the minute, mate. We're definitely dining in there as much as we can. I'll throw straight into it here right off the bat. As always, keep your questions coming through and we'll try and hit them as much as possible. But I know Ross has got some things that he's been working on in this off-season and some things that he'll show and share with us. But Roscoe, I thought, first off, how are you, mate? Check in with you and check out how things are going over there. You doing well?
Yeah, doing well. Getting through it. Like after the initial kind of shock and resignation of being stuck in home and having to change plans, like you adapt and adjust and find your routine around home and start to explore some projects that you haven't gone into for a long time. So no, it's been fun. And I make my daily trips out to the street just outside to dribble the ball against the ground for about 20 minutes just to get my basketball fix in. We got no hoop around here. But other than that, it's just been watching a lot of video and trying to get better. So it's been good.
Awesome, mate. And today's topic is vitamins. And we tagged that a little bit at home, but just in general, player development thoughts. And we know that's something that you've had a lot of influence at many different levels. And I guess I wanted to start there and give us your definition of vitamins and your experience with it at varying levels.
Yeah, so vitamins is for us something that we put in this year with Melbourne United, and it constituted our player development program and really spoke to our pre and post practice player development, where basically found a way to touch each guy individually on their specific needs. So vitamins really is kind of the skill work that each player needs, the vitamins that they need in their daily life that they can't go without. It doesn't have to be something massive. This doesn't need to be a 2-hour workout or an hour-and-a-half workout. Sometimes it's just as simple as the 20-minute focused in on one specific thing that as a staff, as an organization, along with that conversation with that player, we've all prioritized that's going to help that player take themselves to the next level or help them maintain what we need from them throughout the season. So sometimes vitamins, it takes a different form at different times throughout the year, from your preseason and training camp or off season to all of a sudden you're in the middle of the season and it's winning time. And so sometimes that shifts the spotlight a little bit of what the most important, in a sense, like drugs or vitamins that player needs that day. And so it's trying to be really aligned as a staff with that. Sometimes it's working just with that one individual. Sometimes it's grouping guys together. So we had a thing where basically we had about 6 guys who would come in for pre-practice vitamins and then another 6 who would come in for post-practice vitamins. Have 3 or 4 coaches on the floor. And so one or two guys at a basket. Just be very organized with the skill work that we want to begin in with those guys. That was our vitamin program in a sense.
Beautiful, and I think it was clear that the more the season went on, the more it was player driven. The guys just knew what level we wanted them to get to, and I think that was a huge advantage in how we operate, and that the athlete gets to take some ownership as that thing goes along as well. I guess talking about where starting with an individual plan for players, like what are your thoughts in and around that, and either examples obviously with us but also with other athletes that you've worked with in the past?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen here. Let me know if it works as I do it. That all good?
Yep, we got you, mate.
Sweet. So look, this is a template that I've just kind of used over the years, and there's deeper details that you can dive into that you can kind of hold in a separate place, but just as kind of a home base, I've always liked to kind of use this. So this is just kind of, I'm not the most computer savvy, but a buddy of mine just through Google, we just kind of create Google has a lot of different things on their suite. So this little thing that we created. So this is just a kind of splash page, just speaking to the main things, just from a staff standpoint, that we want out of our development program, out of our vitamins program. Kaizen is like a word that's always been really big to me. It's just that it means continual improvement. You see it in the talent code and the culture code. It's a word that comes up a lot. But just to me, it's as good of a word to speak to the development that we want for ourselves as a staff, but also one out of our players. But this takes a state of humility and being willing to accept the need for continual improvement, and having the forward thinking and the foresight to kind of chart out the right path. I think number one, the most important thing just from a staff perspective is just like the alignment necessary to execute development with your players. And from different situations I've been with coaching in the G League to coaching in the NBA and coaching with Melbourne, like I've seen the really good and the really bad of how that can go. Whereas some situations I've been with here in the US at times where all the efforts are in the right place as far as wanting to help this player get better, but there's never the meeting in the first place to really align everyone's thinking and prioritize everyone's thinking of this is the single most important thing we need from this player to get better, to be focused on improving. This is number two. And everyone mirroring that statement, where it just becomes a pinball effect, wherever that player turns, they're hearing the same message over and over again. Obviously, more than ever, players have influences outside your organization now, especially at the pro level, from other trainers or other coaches in their life, or family or friends, or Twitter even, with the pressure that they may feel from there if they're at the professional level. And while there's certain influences we want to make sure we bring in and we incorporate to that discussion, for the most part, we want to make sure that our aligned statement as an organization stands stronger than anything, and that we can get the player aligned with that same vision. Obviously, speaking of, you're working on a player's shot, sometimes the worst thing that can happen is like he's working with Coach A one day on his shot, and then Coach B comes through the next day and all of a sudden points out something different about his shot. It takes him off on a whole nother thing, and you end up chasing your tail. And sometimes the player gets hurt in that process in terms of their mechanics or their game. And so just being really aligned with what messages are being communicated to that player regularly, super important. Consistency falls in next, a very similar thing, and just like the consistent message that is going to that player. And then number three, which I think more than ever, and Justin, you just touched on it, is just like the player ownership is, I think, like in the past, maybe there's a feel for the coach being up here and the player being at a lower level and having to be spoken to and told what to do. And there's times for that, but certainly at our level that we're working with guys at the professional level, we have to first kind of have an appreciation for the player that we have before we've ever gotten to work with that campus and had an impression on them. They've done a certain amount of work to become the player they are, and the first part is making them feel appreciated for the talent that they have, and then sitting down with them and having them part, an active part, and having them communicate kind of where they feel their development needs to go for their future. And then the next part of the process is aligning that with, all right, this is where we think development needs to go to help us impact our winning, because we want to be a championship team. And sometimes there's some things that are mutually exclusive there, and you have to communicate to the player like, no, we need you to shift your focus to this. But I think player ownership is a huge part of this. So just a little, these are two random names. These aren't actual names of players, just substituting other guys' names, but an example of just what this looks like. So you just kind of get this homepage for the players. So Mike Gibbs, these up being links that you can kind of store your daily workouts in. So your daily vitamins. Or as a coach, you can go in, type it in, throw in what you've done for the day, and everyone on the staff can use it as a kind of homepage to be able to see what that guy's done. The first kind of evaluation thing, it's a really simple process that I like to do, is just simply getting an understanding of who that player is now. So who he is now goes in this list, and obviously any amount of characteristics that can go in there, but being brutally honest with exactly who that player is right now that you have. The next part now is having the vision of, all right, after we're done working with him at the end of this year, at the end of this season, or at the end of this off season, who will he become? And painting that picture of the kind of the gap we're trying to bridge. And now that leads you to like what gets him there, and that's a pathway. And so that becomes now prioritizing, being very clear of looking at, all right, what is going to take him from who he is now to who he will become, and starting to lay that out in priorities. So for this player, shooting development, a foundational form shooting routine, and building out what that's going to look like. It's not one size fits all when it comes to shooting. A lot of times different guys have different drills or different balance drills that are going to help lock their shot in. Paint probe development for this player who's a guard, really important, and some different things to touch on there, and then building him as a ball screen playmaker. And so now as a staff, you go about, all right, how are our best methods to get that done? And that's where it shows up a little bit more in your actual workout information. And the other part I like to this is just now kind of discussing as a staff, what are the skill sets we want this player to study? So guard, we want to be a lead guard, and develop as a guy who can really run, like organize a team and be a high-level ball screen playmaker. So got some different examples and different film that we're going to acquire for these guys to watch. You'll see there. And now also finding some key analytics to track that may be markers of their improvement over time. And so sometimes you just got to come up with some really unique stats beyond the box score stats. So you may have to track this with film and doing the work in your own time. But it's a rugby coach at Cal University named Jack Clark. They won a ton of championships there, for what it's worth, winning rugby championships in the U.S. college system. But he's a really big one of my favorite statements he said was like, if it's something you value, it's something you have to track. And so we value the pace that this guard creates. So we're going to track how often he gets the ball over half court by the 21-second mark on the shot clock. I'm going to track how often he gets the ball below the free throw line extended before 17 seconds on the shot clock. We're going to track his paint touches per game. And unique stats that don't show up in the box score, but they're process-oriented stats. Process-oriented stats that we believe if he's hitting those marks, he's having his impact as a playmaker and as a pacemaker that we want. So yeah, just an example of that. I'll stop the share and kind of open it up to any questions that we want to have on that. But yeah, a picture of potentially how to build a player development plan.
Beautiful, Roscoe. And one of the questions that's kind of come through here is, when sitting down with the players to discuss those plans, is it all three of us and led by Dino, or is it individually taken care of? Do you want to talk about how we took care of our individual athletes throughout the year?
Yeah, help me fill in the gaps along the way as I jog my memory of different parts of the globe that I've been jumping around to lately. But yeah, I mean, so this year, obviously, at different times with staffs, you arrive at different places. So obviously, I came into the staff. This is my first year with the group, and I came in off the World Cup, and Justin, Dino, you guys had already been rolling with this thing, and I know I put a lot of work in and already to building a lot of the player development plans for guys. And then as we got into it and I arrived and got a feel for people and we had more talks, I think I do recall first us all sitting down as a staff together and kind of going through each player of what it looks like what our priorities are for the guys and who we need them to be for our group. Because we had a pretty talented group that maybe some sacrifices were necessary. And so we had to make sure vitamins also played a part in like shifting individuals' attention to certain things that we needed them to focus on for our team and winning. And now the next part became, all right, how can we skillfully communicate this to the player and bringing them? We think we ended up from there. We assigned ourselves to kind of 3 or 4 different guys, right, Justin?
Yep.
And sat down and basically had discussions just between one coach and the player and what that program looks like and I think the thing that Dino led really well with us this year is it was quarterly check-ins we did, right?
Yep.
Josie, you may be able to speak to that one a little bit better, and because that was something you guys have been doing.
Yeah, I guess like for us, apologize for that. Yeah, every quarter of the season that's relevant to games played, the athletes would get a full review. That's from the gym point of view, but also where we saw them sit with their individual performance plans, and that also couples with their post-game video reviews as well. It's something that's constantly drawn back to and tracked and where we're going to. But yeah, agree. Like I think with what you brought in is, I guess, a more systematic approach to it. We'd always done pre-practice workouts, but definitely not as a formulated way as what you implemented with vitamins this year. And it was just good to see, again, how the players just bought into it and kept progressing through the year as it went on. Just one thing I wanted you to hit on, Roscoe, is like, what are the non-negotiables in player development, in your opinion, that when building an individual plan or what an individual athlete needs, what are some of the non-negotiables that have to be in place in those workouts?
Yeah, first I would just say, like, again, come back to just the importance of building trust with the player before telling them about the player that they need to be. And sometimes things happen quick, and that process has to go a little bit faster. But as much as I can now, the biggest thing I've learned is, again, like, it starts with an appreciation for who the player is right now, and meeting them there and making them feel valued for that player. And sometimes it just means at the beginning, making them feel a little bit juiced off of just like, I'm gonna put you in a position to continue to strengthen your strengths. And now you start to get a better feel for how players receive criticism and take advice and stuff. And now you start to build a rapport where, again, a player's game is like your signature. You don't just let anyone choose what your signature is going to be. It's personal. And so start to build the rapport where you can have an impact on their game, and start to work on that together. So the next part is now aligning priorities. I think that's as big of a non-negotiable as there is for me. Of like, we try to achieve everything in this 1 hour session of getting our ball handling and our shooting and our finishing in, our defensive work in. We're going to get maybe very tiny increment improvements in all those areas. It'll be very hard to see over time, compared to if we can be really clear between us and the player and as a staff of what our priorities are, and zero in on one or two things that we're just going to hammer out over and over again. And it comes down to the skillfulness of us as coaches to not make that boring in a sense, and find different ways to achieve it sometimes. That's where you start to see the leaps and improvement happen pretty quickly, and the buy-in happen for guys because they see themselves improving in those areas. So I think prioritizing would be my biggest non-negotiable. Once you hit the floor, like, I think just being very clear with, especially in season, of the level of exertion that you're willing to accept that day. And so obviously load management, a big term in the world today in sports, but at any given time throughout the season, we're working with high minute guys or low minute guys. And we're working on 4 days out from the game, or a day before the game, or a day of the game. And understanding what the load expected is for that session, and being able to be strong enough as a coach first to hold your player accountable to that standard relentlessly, but then also not being, I guess, in a sense, insecure as a coach where you feel that they just need to be going balls to the wall hard all the time just to feel like I have a certain level of control over this guy. What's best for him that day? It's the day before the game. He's a high minute guy. We can achieve a lot potentially on working on some ball screen reads, but doing it maybe at a slower pace than 100% speed and with less contact. But it's more of a brain workout for that day. Maybe it's just sitting down with them for film that day, and that's their vitamins, and getting some shots up. The famous one is always like, again, like really understanding what a player needs and what's going to help them in their current situation. It's like the Steve Kerr one back in the day. Like he's playing with Michael Jordan, and he's like literally his job is to come in and might get 2 shots a game, and
down and getting to make shots.
His success as a career in his career is going to be based off of just making those 2 shots, making 1 out of 2 of those shots consistently. And so he switched his training up, his workouts up for a period of time where him and the coach they'd do an hour workout, but he'd shoot 6 shots in that time. He'd get warmed up, he'd shoot a shot from 3 that the coach would just call out some random scenario. They'd sit down, they'd chat like he was on the bench, and he'd have to get right back up again 10 minutes later and be ready to knock down a shot coming down at full speed right away, and train himself that way. So sometimes it takes a level of creativity. But again, just coming back to just understanding like what is the load that player needs that day and holding them to that level relentlessly. Yeah, that would be.
Oh, beautiful. Also, Roscoe, talk to us about, so obviously there's team needs with individual development, but then individuals have their own thought process on where they need to go and what they want to get better at. Where do you feel the balance needs to be, and how do you generate the best outcome for everyone in that? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, we talked about it a little bit. Like now it's literally we've got, as our team, we've got our championship brand that we are trying to communicate to the players and everything to that singular player and everything that goes into that for what we see their role being in that. And at the same time, we do need to find a way to get them to communicate in a sense what they feel their brand is, their future is, the picture that they see for them as a player going forwards, beyond this season, so that they understand like, hey, we do care about that. We care for you. We understand this is your livelihood, and we want to help build you and prepare you for the next situation. Also, we have to get both of those on the table in a sense as soon as we can, and we got to quickly see, all right, well, what if their vision is not a part of our vision for them, and how can we be skillful in communicating like this, getting them to a place where they're willing to prioritize the things that we need from them from a winning perspective, but also having them understand, hey, we're not losing sight of this stuff that may not be a part of that for us right now, and we are going to spend time with you working on that, but there's a level of, I guess, admission ticket skill set that we need you to be working on and dedicating yourself to first to get yourself at the VIP table to spend some time on that stuff that excites you for your future. And I think obviously a big part of that shifts from off season to in season, where off season there's certainly a level of future thinking that can go in towards working with that player compared to once you hit in season. We're talking about what can we do to get you ready for your role and to kill that role in 2 nights from now when we play this game.
Yeah. And I think that periodization, that's the important part to discuss with the athletes, correct? Like that's where we need them to understand what phase we're at. This is the why as to why we're doing things now versus us just rolling in and say, all right, this is what we're doing today and away we go, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Beautiful. We'll jump into some questions here, mate. There's a couple good ones coming through. We've got some examples here. Can athletes develop things like Chris Goulding's jump shot or Macca's leaping ability, or are they just natural gifts? And given pro or developing athletes should have similar work ethics, how can you achieve and help that through?
Yeah, I mean, I think like some people are just, they start playing sports and they have a natural coordination for sports in general. So certainly there's an element to that, and there's certainly guys that are gifted with a level of athleticism. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about improving your leaping ability, like Mitch, who I'm sure would be hyped to hear us talking about his athleticism and his leaping ability, and Chris, like his high level shooting ability, like those are things you work on unquestionably. Like there's a level of dedication that is has never lost when there's that level of commitment when it comes to shooting. You commit yourself to being a better shooter and get the reps in, and build your shot up the right way. Like absolutely, you can become a pretty damn high level shooter if you dedicate yourself to it. And
Yeah, I think that's something we can give the example of, right? Like Chris, post practice every day for his vitamins, 10 made threes in a row from 7 spots. He'll deliberately miss on the 9th one if he didn't like how the action came out of his hand, which is always fun as a rebounder when you've been there for a while. But he does that religiously every day and will not leave the building until he's done that, and then 50 made free throws. And that's consistency and perfection with it, isn't it? Like it's that attention to detail and no days off mentality with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like all the best shooters I've come across, Chris being one of them, like they all have just this level of OCD-ness to them, of like with their shot. Of like, no, this isn't always about the number of me making 5 or me making 10. This is about it feeling right. This is about, I'm going to shoot till this feels right. And I think that speaks to exactly what you said of him getting to 9 sometimes and having the opportunity to make 10 and being like, no, that's not the set I wanted. And it's just this driven dedication to it. And a human gets that in any area of life. Like it's unlimited, I think, what they can achieve in that. And so a guy like Chris, he has that when it comes to shooting, and it shows. And it's a funny thing, but great shooters tend to be the guys who are last on the floor shooting after practice. It's always seems to work out that way.
So I think the other thing with Chris that I've appreciated in my time working with him is when he knows how a certain team's going to defend him, that's where he wants to adjust the workout for that week. So he doesn't get to that comfort point, which I think some athletes are pretty comfortable to in individual workouts. Yep, we'll just have my routine because that's what my routine is. But I think what he separates him from others is he knows, all right, they're going to try and top block me, so I have to get my footwork going the other way better this week. Or examples like that where the finite detail, I think, is definitely something that separates him from others.
He's got a really good balance, right, of like he keeps things as game-like as possible in his workouts and repping out specific footwork like you're talking about for specific situations, asking. He wants contests all the time. He wants to get hit on the arms after his shot so that he can rep feeling that out if he doesn't get calls in the game and still be able to make shots and stuff, like, while at the same time having a tremendous understanding of what's going to have him ready physically for this game tomorrow night. And so he's not going to run himself into the ground. Like he's going to get his game like reps at a pace that allows him to feel it and make sure he feels it right. But he also has a really good feel for that, obviously from years of experience. But I think he strikes that balance as well as anyone.
No, for sure. Absolutely. Next one here, which I think is a great question, and I'll let you start with it, Roscoe. Do other teammates know about individual development plans, and do they help their teammates achieve them? Thoughts in and around that?
That's a good one. I like that. I think like we certainly pair guys together that have similar goals in mind, and so they get a pretty good feel for what one or the other is trying to achieve. Times we'll pair different positions together, and with them having an understanding of, like, for this guard, he needs to work on his ball screen passing, and as a big, I'm trying to work on my coverage reads, what to do versus a hard show, what to do versus a drop, what to do versus switch, and they understand like the need to benefit each other in that back and forth. And so I think it shows up in those areas. As far as, I don't know how much we've actually gone out of our way to communicate to the whole team what each person's specific plan is. But I think guys certainly get a feel for it as the season goes on. I think one thing that, this is not something we did, but a coach in Belgium that I know did that I thought was pretty cool is come game time. And this wasn't even so much around development, but he did, like, they paired up guys. So when I'm on the floor, there's always a guy, a teammate on the bench who I had one specific KPI for that time that I was on the floor that he had to hold me to. And he was constantly giving me feedback on when I came back off the floor. And I was doing the same thing for him. And so they kind of grouped everyone in pairs. And so in a similar way, I guess that speaks to what you would hope your players get to with development, and understanding this is the thing this guy's really striving to work for right now. And let me help drive that for him and give him some recognition when he's working away at it.
I like that. Yeah, I'm with you. It's probably not a formal thing, but one of the things that definitely happens through the years, and I think David Barlow is one of the best at this, is as he sees guys working out on things, he then will have a conversation with them about how that skill set or the thing that we've spent time on that day can work hand in hand with something he does in the game, and then build those relationships and those thoughts. And I think that's just a huge advantage. And obviously, veteran leadership's a blessing, but something that's probably how the development plans intertwine with each other.
Yeah.
Thoughts around video usage in individual development, how much we do, and I guess what your own beliefs are with that.
Yeah, so two parts, and I'll jump on and show a video. I think like the first part is obviously the video that you show of that player to help them learn from their own experience. And I think, again, something that we targeted and being very clear as a staff of like, hey, I've got these three guys after this game. Justin's got these three guys. Dino's got these three guys. Reese has got these three guys. And we're going to make sure that we hit them over the course of the week with their clips. And so making sure, there's never an opportunity missed for them to learn from their past game or even their past practice. And so I think those are great conversations where you sit down with the player. And again, I think we probably all find the most successful ones are when we breadcrumb the players more often into kind of getting them to speak to what they see before we just spoon feed them the answer. There's more learning that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that there's that aspect of the film review of themselves, and then also sometimes player who's lower minutes, getting them in on a player of a similar position to watch their film with them. And so I know like Chris was good with that this year of letting like Sam McDaniel jump in and sit in on his film, so he can kind of learn from some of Chris's mistakes or learn from some of Chris's successes and get a look into Chris's mind. So I think that was another thing we did well. But the other part is video exemplars, and you're working on guys with a certain skill set. You're working on this player with ball screen reads and finding a collection of clips from kind of their players to study to help them learn and give them a visual before you get them on the floor and start working on that. And I think those two things work together really well. So like, just an example, and just being as specific as you can with that in the skill sets you're showing. Again, I'll share my screen and have a look. Let me know if this video runs smoothly. If it's choppy, we can shut it down. So one thing we like that we're really big on is this closeout footwork. Obviously, place where refs call a lot of travels, and once you create a little advantage offensively, you don't want to lose that advantage because a player catches and holds and has poor footwork to maneuver past the closeout coming at them and read the closeout. So this is a specific one that I call a momentum rip, where you're kind of moving into the catch. You watch here, player off the ball. As the ball is coming to him, he's already moving downhill. Feet set, already moving downhill. So he's already got his advantage moving into the catch. This is something we'll work with our players a lot from this slot area. Watch Donovan Mitchell. Right here is spacing away, 45. He already gets into this little skip right here where he's moving downhill into the catch. He's got momentum moving downhill into it. And again, this builds into just like our trying to train our players to have first touch decisions. We're on the catch, they know they're shooting, they're driving, they're passing, and it's happening in 0.5 seconds, really quick. Again, there's that quick momentum rip. As soon as that ball is coming, Jay Crowder's on the move, punishing any shrink help. Weak side corner here, Royce O'Neal, moving into the catch. Okay, this is similar concept, but now this is really running through the catch. Call it a road runner. Running right through the catch. So instead of it being a catch and go, you're thinking it's more go and catch in a sense. Again, you can watch Crowder here just running through the catch. For Australia, Patty Mills running through the catch right here. Royce O'Neal, road runner. So a pretty tough thing to guard on that. So I show that as an example of, here we are. That's something that, say we want to target working with one of our wing players on who's spaced off the ball a lot. Supplement film with it. We'll show film first. We'll hit the floor. So we may show film, just a few of those clips, 6-7 clips right before a vitamins workout. Then hit the floor and go through some 1-on-0 reps of it for them to get a feel of just the footwork and the timing and kind of map out the situations that they may see. Then we may throw in just some like scripted defense as a coach in that situation to get them feel doing it versus contact and with the body in front of them. And then at that point, I think as quick as you can get to this part of now creating some sort of small-sided game, whether it's a 1-on-1, a 2-on-2, a 1-on-2, that spoon feeds them the opportunity to now go apply that skill and be put in a situation where now it goes from the ownership of the coach giving it to the player to, as a player, they have ownership of this now. And they build confidence in that place where now they feel they can perform in a 5-on-5 environment and have the recognition to use it there. And again, like I thought, another thing we did well this year was just like the creativity that we used in coming up with different small-sided games to build different scenarios for these guys to get kind of like high saturated reps in one specific skill area. So we want to work on a guy's high glass finishes, finding a way to get that guy get the defense in a disadvantaged situation in a 1-on-1, so that with a secondary defender coming over. Or we want to work on a player's ball screen setups, playing 1-on-1 and pick and roll with the coach as a screener. There's any amount of ways that you can be creative and using film to supplement that. I think that's just kind of hitting those different parts of the process, or kind of golden, or the golden parts of player development.
Beautifully done, Roscoe. Some really good examples there of what we do. Moving ahead here, mate, just a few more questions for you. In your experience, what do you incorporate in player development holistically that you consider to be an important focus area that isn't commonly practiced or done? Have you got anything there that you think is unique to what you use or your own thought?
Again, I don't know if this is so much. I'm not going to necessarily speak to something. First, okay, these may not be unique. I would say, again, I'll just come back to me what I see the most important thing now in player development being outside of the vets you're working with in season, like that we have sometimes with the Chris Goulding or like a David Barlow, but for everyone else, again, like those small-sided games to me are so important. Like that's where, and it's not always pretty. Sometimes it makes it messier, and it's not as perfect as you get from the 1-on-0 reps that players get. But once they can get a certain level of competency in a skill 1-on-0, where they can perform it just decently, where they have a grasp of it as quick as possible, get into that 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or 1-on-2 scenario. And so just an example of that. So something to me that's a massive priority for us always is working on like how well we get our players playing out of advantage situations. So we have all our different offensive sets that we run to get just an incremental advantage. One closeout, one rotation, where now the defense is scrambling. So we call that dominoes, right? We get the dominoes falling, and now how can we keep them falling at that point? And so in our player development, like we have to train our players to be really good at playing versus a disadvantaged defense and playing versus closeouts and making good decisions in those situations. So I'll just show my board right here, just like a really simple example of like a 1-on-1 we may do. Basic is we'll go coach right here. Can you see the board pretty clearly on this one?
Yeah, mate, you're good.
We'll go, all right, so player right here on offense, player right here on defense right there, and basically on the coach's snap, it's a sprint out to the corner. He's sprinting out to the corner also, obviously disadvantaged scenario. Ball goes, is passed right there, 3-second shot clock for him to score, and it's 3 points for a 3 points for anything in the charge circle in the paint, and 1 point for anything in between, in the mid-range. And so right away you're getting quick first touch decisions the guy's getting a very small incremental advantage by the lead we give him running out to the corner. He's working on what we call like into space, out to space fundamentals. So anytime you like drive into space and kick it out, getting out to space and respacing as quick as possible, and understanding how to organize your feet, sprinting out behind the three to get to that. So that'd be something as simple as we've worked on those 1-on-0, this player sprinting out full speed, catching and shooting. We've worked on sprinting out full speed, catching feet wide, being able to cross step and jab either direction and drive by a defender, and contact drives off that. And now let's find a scenario where we can rep that out. And so again, I think that's the uniqueness is the creativity that you find in those different one-on-one drills you can create. And it's unlimited, the different ones you can do there. But I think, again, targeting those domino, like the skill sets required to be great with dominoes as a team and all the things that go into that is really important, because that's what you're trying to create for your team as a coach, is all those little advantages. So once you've created that advantage for your team with the offense you've laid in place, you certainly want them to be able to take it and run with it and turn it into a great shot for your group.
Beautiful. Well done, mate. Another one here for you, like the younger, and I think we've got some good examples on this, the younger development guys, so a Shorty, Jack Purchase, who don't play as many minutes or get to play. How do we track their development? And also, how do we keep them motivated in their vitamins and individual workouts? Do you want to start off with that?
Yeah. So again, like for the most part, like I'll speak to it, and I think you did the same with Jack a lot. For the most part, you were working with Jack throughout most of the year, and I was working with Shorty. Like we treated most of the season for them as if it was an off season in a sense, in terms of their development work. Like you can push them a lot harder throughout their stuff. And with Shorty, it was absolutely the discussion of like, all right, what do we need to work on to build you into being a really solid backup point guard in this league? That's the next step that you got to make, whether it's with our team this year or the following year. And how can we build you towards that? And so obviously the load management in that sense, we're still tracking it, but it's just much higher loads for those guys in their workouts because they're not getting the in-game minutes. And then the other thing that was done really well was like games played, they don't play any minutes that night, they're in the next morning, and we're finding a way to organize some sort of 3-on-3 game, or if we don't have enough, some sort of 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 game. And again, out of all different game situations, different scripted, creative ways to stimulate them getting real life game reps, keep their conditioning ready. So to keep them ready for an opportunity that may come to them.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we do really well is our summer league, where we need to find a way to extend that so it goes through more of the season. But for our guys that aren't playing minutes, a chance to trial and error 5-on-5 and also try and be the dominant player on the floor and the things we're working on, put them into actual gameplay. I think we saw some good examples of that from our guys this year, where playing in that and then getting an opportunity on the floor as well. Toy, I think on the back of a game out there, Macca came out a couple of times because he just wanted to try some things and getting that opportunity to then go into game and perform. I think that was a good advantage and something we want to keep growing and get better.
And it's just like 100%. And that's just reps, right? Like it's you, again, like for people who've read the talent code, like there's an example in there about like why Brazilian football players like rose to such a high skill level. Just like they looked at all these different places in the world in different crafts, and so soccer was one of them in Brazil. Like why are these guys so unbelievably skilled with the soccer ball? And it turns out there's a game called futsal in Brazil, which is basically it's on a smaller enclosed field,
small-sided game basically,
right? It's a small-sided game, and it's about it's less people who are involved. So instead of it, I'm not good with soccer, instead of it being like 11 on 11, it's 6-on-6 maybe or something like that, but played in a way smaller field. So the skill level to be able to control the ball goes way up. But because there's less players on the field, each person's getting way more touches and way more opportunities to get reps manipulating the ball versus a defender. And so when we talk about like those guys like Shorty and Jack, like the issue that they're facing, the problem that they're facing is a problem of reps. How do we still get them the reps in a situation where they're not necessarily getting it in the game. Because this guy is getting 20 pick and rolls every game because he's playing 20 minutes a night or something, and Shorty's not getting that because he's not playing. Like, it's just how it works. This guy's going to grow faster because he's going to see more situations. So we can't leave that to chance. So we got to create those scenarios for him to make sure he's getting 20 live ball screen reps in a practice scenario, whether it's us simulating defenses as coaches, whether it's us organizing those little small-sided games of 2-on-2s or 1-on-2s, or them going to summer league and us targeting specific opportunities throughout summer league for them to get those reps. Yeah, that's, I guess, our version of trying to recreate Brazilian football for our guys.
One day we'll get to that level, mate.
Yeah.
Just one here relevant to VJBL. Like, the question is about, coaches only seeing their athletes 1 or 2 times a week, maybe 1 or 2 coaches involved with them in their short-term practices. Like, the best way to implement a vitamins type system within a junior rep team. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think on that one is, like, when you're trying to educate your players a little bit and giving them some tools to be able to work also on their game in the days you're not seeing them. I think that also comes into play at that point. And so one thing, like, especially in the off season, when I got guys a bunch, that I tried to establish is maybe we're going to work out in the off season for an hour and a half, but having 20 minutes of that's the same thing, relentless, it just becomes their routine. It becomes a routine, and that kind of becomes, in a sense, their vitamins of that off-season workout. But really establishing that very clearly, where the player just starts to become ingrained in the player. I mean, we did it this year with, like, with Shay and Shorty with their shooting routine. There was just a very specific shooting routine that we felt was going to help them build as shooters. And at a certain point, like, if I wasn't down there by the time that they hit the court, like, they were already jumping right into it on their own because they knew it so well.
Also pregame, like, they evolved that into their pregame routine, and whether you're there, whether I'm there, they're into it, and I think that's a really good point.
So I think, again, it comes back to what are the priorities for the group. You have 2 practices a week with these players. How can you establish some basic routine for them where they can go through that process over and over again throughout the week on their own, where it becomes something achievable for them in that situation? And I've always talked about it as, like, if you build that routine, what happens is, it's like, some mornings this isn't the case for me because my mind's all over the place. But if I take the same walk around my neighborhood every single day, take the same right turn, take the same left turn, take the same right turn for this 20-minute walk, like, the more I do it, the more, if I do it mindfully, like, the more I start to realize a new tiny little detail about that walk each time. Like, oh man, I didn't see those flowers last time, or I didn't see the dew on the grass this last time. You start to notice some tiny little details that show up. And then the same way with that routine vitamin part that you're adding is, the more the player commits to it mindfully and really engaging in each rep, they start to discover, like, a little bit more mastery of that each time, and a little bit deeper level of detail each time. I think, yeah, you can build that. It's really helpful for the player.
Flowers and dew, mate. You're such a romantic. Another question here, just about big men, and I think it is one that a lot of coaches wrestle with at varying age groups. The question is, with small ball being very trendy lately, do you continue with that trend, develop their shooting, pick and pop game, etc., or where it's mainly face to the basket, or still work on traditional fundamentals, back to the basket, mid-range shot, etc.? Thoughts in and around youth development and the genuine bigs versus where the game's going? Yeah,
youth development. I think like, we should be striving to get our players to be as skilled as possible at the youth level. Just because a player is taller than the rest of the kids at 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, or even a little bit older than that, like, it doesn't mean that he should be pigeonholed into a certain position at that point. Like, we need to upskill our players early on, and give them the opportunity to grow their game on the perimeter, grow their game as playmakers, grow their game as ball handlers, but also understand that it goes the other way too, because there's a lot of skills that players learn by playing in the post and playing inside and having to finish in a crowd that translate very well as you move out toward being a perimeter player. And the footwork you may teach in a face-up game, out of triple threat and different stuff there. So it goes both ways. At the same time, like, I guess speaking to it at the pro level, there's certain stuff at the big position that's probably more prioritized than ever. The post-up being less so. Understanding how to be able to be what I would call a motion maker at the top of the key and make decisions from that spot, from a trail spot, and be able to be great making handoffs. So you have to be a good ball handler in that situation. To be a great passer and from that spot, and being able to make passes off the bounce, being able to be a shooting threat, and being able to attack closeouts. I think those are all things that actually the bigs now are pretty relevant. And then the next part is just in the pick and roll game, being able to be really clean with just your reads as a screener versus different coverages with your different personnel that's presented on your team. And I think we kind of started to shift towards that more than we have. Let's build out this guy's post game and his footwork one-on-one in there.
Really good answer, man. One of the things I've always thought is an absolute key for bigs at a junior level is try and develop their hands and their ability to catch and as you said, be able to pass and whatnot. And, I'm against two-ball dribble in a lot of ways, but just getting bigs working on two balls and being able to develop hands, I think still goes a long way to all those facets that you've spoken about there. A really good question here, man. I think it would be interesting to hear what your thoughts are. Where do you go for your inspiration? Obviously outside of me when we're rooming together, mate, but your learning and development in the player development space, like where do you draw inspiration from?
First of all, we've had some spectacular discussions when
Absolutely.
we're rooming together on the road. I have a full notebook of. But separately from that, just first and foremost, like I would say the place I've learned the most about basketball from is watching basketball. And so early on, I was lucky enough, maybe 18, 19, to get access to a thing called Synergy. Some of you guys may have heard of it. It's basically a website with a database of NBA, Europe, Australian League, every game that goes down. It's basically could just be presented a box score, be able to click on any stat in that box score, and it shows you all the clips of that, in a sense. So I could watch all the Chris Paul's pick and rolls from the year. I could watch all the points that Chris Golden scored last night. But it also allows me to build a database and organize stuff and grab clips and move it here, move it there. And so my biggest learning is when I really want to learn something and I say, hey, I need to be better teaching finishing. I turn around and I pick out a few players. I go do a search of who's got the highest points per possession on finishes in and around the basket at this position, at the point position or at the three position. And let me watch these 3 or 4 guys and understand the finishes that they're doing and the things that are going into that. And now let me start to get creative and scheme and drills that'll help the player build that skill set. But I've learned more from players than I've learned from anyone, just from watching them. In addition to that, obviously, there's any amount of coaches clinics and resources out there in the world now. So much more than there were 5-6 years ago even. But I think just committing to studying a player that you feel does something really well is often the best learning process you can do.
You have non-coaching resources, mate. We'll let you give you a shameless plug. Like, what have you got going in this off-season?
Yeah, check out. So it's going to be a funky name, but it's called Efficient Sauce. Yeah, and it's on Instagram. Can you
spell that? You've got everyone's trying to figure out what your accent is right now, mate. So if you can spell that one out.
Well, yeah. As far as I know, unlike Top Lock and Top Block, or unlike tomato and tomato, or I'm pretty sure efficient is said and spelt the same way all around the world. But it's Efficient Sauce. Yeah, Kylie will have a link that she can send to you guys if my accent really is that poor, which I sometimes it is. It's a mix of American, New Zealand, Waiheke, and all over the place. But Mark Alabakov just said it's definitely top lock.
But, I saw that.
Respect, brother. So Efficient Sauce, it's on Instagram and on Twitter. And then we just opened up the website efficientsauce.com. What this is, on Instagram, it's going to be a ton of teaching videos of different terminology about the game, different concepts, a ton of different stuff you can learn from there, different clips we'll post. And then the website, what we're doing is we're doing these things called sauce sessions, where we get basically 6 to 10 coaches on a sauce for the person that's asking. SAUCE. Yeah. Efficient sauce, like tomato sauce. But we get 6 to 10 coaches on a Zoom call. And in a sense, I'll referee. And so everyone brings their whiteboards to the session and all throw out a scenario. And so I may throw out, for instance, you got a knockdown shooter at the 2 spot, and you need to find a way to take advantage of that out of a horns alignment. And I'll put a minute 10 on the clock, like you would have in a timeout. And you got a minute 10, everyone goes to their board and draws. We're doing it all at the same time. So it's a safe space. You're not on the hot seat where everyone's watching you. And then right away, minute goes up, clock goes off, next scenario comes. Sideline out of bounds, 107, 104, 3.2 seconds left. This team's, you've scouted, they switch everything. Find a way to manufacture a 3 in this situation. Go, minute 10. And so it's thousands of different scenarios that are going to come your way. For me as an assistant coach, I don't get those reps so much. Like, you don't get those reps unless you're head coaching, where you're having to react and draw on the fly. And so it's a way to sharpen the saw for one. It's also a way to have a lot of scenarios be presented to you and sometimes struggle through them, and then have to turn around after the session and be like, hey, what's a solution that I can research for this? And then obviously within the session, we have a lot of discussion, a lot of ideas thrown around that'll provide some solutions and some different trends going around the world at the time. The other part that we add to it that's made it fun is the second half of the session, we provide a lineup. So we'll customize a lineup. So we did one the other day. It was a NBA lineup. We just kind of grabbed guys from different teams. So it was Goran Dragic, Gary Harris, Joe Ingles, Pascal Siakam, and Steven Adams. And so now you got different talents, different guys. You kind of got to fit around when the scenarios come their way. You may have a non-shooting point guard. You may have a shooting 5, and it makes you kind of have to adjust on the fly. So signups are active on the Efficient Sauce site. Released it today. Would love you guys to come join, and it's been going really well now. We've done about 10 sessions of it, and you guys have really enjoyed it for coaching development.
Yeah, awesome, Roscoe. Good plug there. And one last final question, mate. What is an acceptable sugar level for an assistant coach? Have you figured that one out?
Man.
Roscoe's a sugar fiend, people. I won't get you to go into that one, Roscoe. We'll be here all day. But we joked about the chats we have in the room on the road and whatnot. But again, I encourage coaches just to talk to other coaches. You know, some of the stuff that Roscoe and I have discussed and I've gone away and thought about has been some real value-adding learning, and just awesome to have you on here, mate. I realised how much I'd missed chatting to you, and we've got to make sure we're doing that a bit more while we're on different sides of the world. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for your time, mate. Stay safe over there, and we'll be back here Tuesday night. Dino will be back online. Kyle will get the topics out, and keep tuning in. We appreciate everything. Roscoe, any final words?
No, look, thanks a lot for coming on. And again, just on either of those platforms, whether it's Efficient Sauce or my own on Twitter or Instagram or something, or just through, if you guys get my own contact from Kylie, like, feel free to reach out. Happy to talk basketball with anyone. Yeah, miss you guys. Miss that side of the world. Absolutely.
My dog's right on cue, mate. They're just going nuts. So we'll wrap it up there. Thanks again to our sponsors, Dreamstreet Tire Powers, Teamstream, Fuller, Trojan Tools, Rolled, Subaru, Harcourts, Moose Toys, Chemist Warehouse, Wiz, Sporting Road, and Dermatech. I'm still reading them, Roscoe. I've been saying it every time, and I don't know it off by heart yet. But take care, brother, and we'll catch up soon, guys. All the best.
Appreciate you.